The inquiry process is a tool that you will be using to explore civics. The inquiry process is broken down into 5 basic components. So you can see those 5 components here. You usually begin the process by formulating questions. But that isn't to say that you might start with evidence and analyze it in here and draw conclusions. Let's take a look at these 5 pieces in detail. So formulating questions. You formulate questions related to the applicable overall expectation in order to identify the focus of the inquiry. You ask good questions. Gather and organize. You collect and organize relevant data, evidence, and/or information from primary and secondary sources and/or field studies. The next step is to interpret and analyze. You will analyze the data, evidence, and information using different types of graphic organizers as appropriate. Fourth, you will evaluate and draw conclusions. This is where you synthesize data, evidence, and/or information and make informed critical judgments based on that data, evidence, and/or information. The 5th step, you communicate. So you communicate your judgments, decisions, conclusions, predictions, and/or plans with an audience in a method of your choice. Let's keep going. Let's take a look at the inquiry process in a little more detail. So we'll start by looking at asking good questions. So formulating questions. Effective inquiry questions are open-ended, questions for which there is not just one right answer. Well, here are some tips to making a good inquiry question. A good question is an invitation to think, not just recall, summarize, or details. A good question comes from genuine curiosity and confusion over the world. A good question makes you think about something in a way that you've never considered before. A good question invites deep thinking and deep feelings. A good question leads to more good questions. A good question asks you to think critically, creatively, ethically, productively, and reflectively about essential ideas in a discipline. Here are some examples of good inquiry questions. Why is civics important? If you don't live in Canada, would you want to? Why or why not? Am I a good citizen? How should our government work? How should we balance individual rights and the common good? What do you think are the non-negotiable attributes of a democracy? As you can see, these questions, there isn't just one answer. The next logical step in an inquiry is to gather and organize information. And so you can get information from different types of sources. Primary sources provide contemporary accounts of an event written by someone who experienced or witnessed the event firsthand. These could come from diaries, letters, journals, handwritten manuscripts, autobiographies, photographs, film footage, and so on, interviews. Secondary sources are sources that describe, summarize, analyze, evaluate, and are derived from or based on primary sources. These sort of things might include books, journal articles, biographies, radio or television documentaries, pictures, quotes, and so on. Once you've completed your data collection, you are going to want to interpret and analyze. So this can take the form of many different ways. One way to analyze data from different sources is to use a graphic organizer like a Venn diagram. So you'll see here that a Venn diagram allows you to look at differences and similarities between different sources of information. The 4th step in the inquiry process is to evaluate and draw conclusions. This is where you're going to synthesize all of the information you've collected, and you are going to get to think about it and look at what the evidence tells you, considering all sides of that issue. Finally, you will write a balanced, logical, and well-supported conclusion. The 5th and final step in the inquiry process is to communicate your findings. So these may be judgments, decisions, conclusions, predictions, plans of action, and there are many different ways in which to communicate this information. Summary sheets, tables, scorecards, dashboards, interactive web pages, stories, blogs, action plans, media posts, you name it, you can use them to communicate your findings from the inquiry.